Exit Through the Gift Shop is a 2010 documentary that takes a look at the rise of the street art movement and the mysterious street artist by the name of Banksy. Except it's not. This original descriptor was based on a different documentary titled Life Remote Control, which was so horrible that Banksy himself stepped out of the shadows and usurped the project before it can officially be released. With the footage now in his possession, he realized that the director was a far more interesting subject than himself and decided to revolve the narrative around him. Or did he? Is this entire documentary just an elaborate hoax? Let's find out.
If Banksy was directing the film and half the film is Thierry looking for Banksy, that doesn't compute.
Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, I take a look at what ideas and events inspired movies to be written and filmed. Incorporating documentaries into the rotation was always part of the plan, and I think now is the perfect time to do so. So without further ado, 2010's Exit Through the Gift Shop. Our main subject in this piece is Frenchman Thierry Guetta. Guetta was a migrant who had planted his flag in LA and thrived off his clothing business. But he had an interesting quirk to him. He had a compulsion to film every aspect of his life. Unlike modern day vlogs though, his footage was uninspired and seemingly without purpose.
Because Terry recorded everything all the time, all cameras pointing in all equally useless directions.
You'd get an elbow coming into frame every now and then, and it would go on for 40 minutes, and then the camera would just go, "Quook," and very briefly you'd catch a little bit of action going on. But
the footage was unusable, most of it. It was ridiculous. Most of the time, if a person was up a ladder doing a piece of art on the wall, Terry would be filming the ladder and not the art being made.
Guetta reveals that once a tape was filled, he would just toss it into a box and move on without reviewing it. This habit became a nightmare for producer Jamie DeCruz and editor Chris King, who were tasked to sift through the unlabeled tapes to establish a timeline.
I think there were about 700 by this stage, and we were literally trying to work out the chronology of all these tapes because they were unmarked. We had no idea who the people were when they were shot. So I mean, there were a lot of tapes which didn't have any sound on it, and we didn't understand why. That he revealed that he'd filmed for a year with a fault on his camera, which meant that it wasn't recording audio.
And regardless of his camera competency, it, however, did not hold him back. As the old adage goes, it's not what you know, but who you know. Guetta's entry into the street art began in 1999 during a trip to France. He discovered that his cousin was a street artist, Space Invader, and it naturally filmed him as he put his signature mosaics all over Paris. His connection with Invader opened the doors for him to meet major artists in the game like Shepard Fairey. Post-vacation, Thierry would spend time recording Fairey basically as an unofficial apprentice back in his home turf of LA. This time spent together proved valuable to Terry as he would begin to learn the streamlined process that he would eventually employ. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Being BFFs with Fairey and cousins with Space Invader gave Guetta the street credibility necessary to film the artists freely and with no questions asked, except for the biggest inevitable question: what are you filming for?
I said, I'm gonna make a street art documentary,
Terry's quick answer of "I'm making a street art documentary" satisfied the curious inquiries. I don't think he realized the huge expectations he just placed on himself with that answer. With no other choice, he decided to commit.
I don't think people who were with Terry for all those years ever suspected that he wasn't actually making the film about street art, because that's what he said he was doing.
Right.
That was the obvious thing to assume. Here's a guy with a camera, he's making a film about.
In the coming months, Terry began searching for the most prolific artists in this scene. The more time he spent with the artists, the clearer it became that it wouldn't be a street art documentary without the biggest name in the center of it all: Banksy. But why Banksy? Hailing from Bristol, real name John Graffiti invented graffiti and invented the street art scene all by himself. Just kidding, but his rise to fame is pretty interesting. In 1999, at the same time that Thierry was discovering his familiar roots to Space Invader, Banksy unveiled his breakthrough mural titled Mild Mild West. In the following years, he gained mainstream notoriety when in 2003 and 2004 he placed his works in the halls of Europe's most prestigious museums. A few years later, in 2006, Banksy was preparing for an art exhibit in LA and traveled there to prep and unfortunately faced complications. He needed help, and you can probably see where this is going.
So I went to Los Angeles in about spring 2006, and when I got there, the guy that was supposed to be helping me got turned back at immigration, so I rang the only person I knew in Los Angeles and asked them if they could help me. And they said, well, there's this French guy, he's the cousin of Space Invader, and he knows where all the best walls are in LA. He can help you out.
Through a mutual connection, Terry was recommended to help, and he made himself indispensable to Banksy's needs. What's even more surprising was Banksy's reaction to the camera. Despite being notoriously private, he allowed Terry to film nearly everything. There were rules and limitations, of course, but even that level of access shocked the people within Banksy's inner circle.
The first time Terry was filming Banksy, it was like, what the fuck is going on? I thought, you know, that nobody was allowed to do this.
I can't pinpoint the exact time frame due to conflicting reports, but Banksy was experiencing a meteoric rise in popularity at that time, and now his art was being appropriated by art collectors who wouldn't have given it two shits about it in the streets.
For $550,000.
This was the most perfect time to release the documentary to show the world that it was never about the glamour or the money. They only did it for the love of the game.
So then these famous auction houses, all of a sudden they were selling street art, and suddenly it all became about the money, but it never was about the money. So I said to Terry, right, you have the footage, you can tell the real story of what this art is about. It's not about the hype, it's not about the money, now is the time. You need to get your film out.
Now, under Banksy's pressure, Terry cobbled together a 90-minute mind-numbing documentary titled Life Remote Control. If I were to describe it, I would say it's a montage of random clips stitched together without a clear motive. It's like you're flipping through channels trying to find something to, oh, I get it now. Life Remote Control. He's truly a visionary because this is what we consume nowadays. Anyways, this is where the hoax suspicions begin, or at least to me. If any of the theories have any merit, I believe this is where the scam would have begun. Banksy knew that the footage Thierry had was irreplaceable, so he took the project back with him to England and hired Jamie D. Cruz and Chris King to put it together. The end result is this documentary, Exit Through the Gift Shop.
The first thing that happened was I got a call from him asking if I'd be interested in helping him.
So we went in, and the original idea was that it was going to be a street art film, a film about street art, this art movement.
With another section of the film which would be about Terry, because he was the guy that got the footage.
In order to get Terry out of the way though, Banksy recommended him to create some art and have a show for himself. What he didn't expect was that Terry would go all out and stage a huge exhibition and selling nearly $1 million in art.
When Banksy suggested to Terry, you know, try and making some art yourself, was possibly more kind of experimental. You know, what would happen if you did make some art. It wasn't, we're going to kind of create a sensation. At no point had anyone said go and rent a 30,000 square foot warehouse or make 5,000 pieces of art. It was just, you know, wouldn't it be interesting what would happen if you made...
We heard that he was going to put on a show. We thought it was going to be, you know, a small room with some pictures on the walls and a glass of wine and a few friends hanging around. So when it turned into this huge multimedia event with thousands of people queuing, and it became the art event of that year in LA, people rushed out with cameras to cover the kind of chaos that ensued.
And then the documentary kind of crescendos on that note, and we see Thierry Guetta come out as Mr. Brainwash in the end. And he's continued to ride that wave ever since. Currently he has a museum in Beverly Hills and... wait, nope. Looks like the museum permanently closed in between the scripting and recording of this video. Well, so much for visiting it in the summer. Anyways, he had a museum opened up until 2026. And that's the official story laid out by Banksy. But there's something fishy going on about these accounts. If you think about it, it's pretty remarkable to have all of this on tape. The birth of a contemporary artist from their beginning to their final form. When the documentary premiered, a lot of people were skeptical about the entirety of it. And going through various comment sections, the skepticism continues.
Even today I went on several message boards about the film, and there's still people out there who are saying it's a hoax. And I have found proof that it's a hoax.
And the New York Times, Jeanette Katsoulis, wrote about the film that it's a film that looks like a documentary but feels like a monumental con. Vanity Fair asks it too. You've been out in the press insisting that it's the real thing, which to some people only makes them more suspect that it's fake.
I'll go over the hoax claims and then I'll go over various interviews where they claim it's real. None of it matters though, because those being interviewed have ties to Banksy himself. 15 years ago, someone made an AMA claiming to have worked with Thierry before the film was released, and luckily for me, all the questions I had gathered over the internet were neatly consolidated in this thread. Now I'm putting a lot of weight into this unverified user, but they seem to answer all the questions logically. Also, all the answers given by this anonymous user seem to be corroborated by Chris and Jamie in subsequent interviews years later. Is it part of the hoax? I don't know, you tell me. But still, take these answers with a grain of salt. Doing some basic snooping, it looks like the account is ran by someone named Jeff Alulis, or stage name Jeff Penalty, lead singer of the Dead Kennedys. Based on his wiki, it looks like he's also a documentarian, and based on his replies, he was also friends with Shepard Fairey, so that makes sense. Now to the juicy stuff. The suspicions claim that Mr. Brainwash is a creation made by Banksy in order to mock the art world by proving that they'll shell out money for anything. In the documentary, we see Terry travel everywhere, and near the end, we see him hiring artists for his show. Naturally, the question is, where do you get all this money from? Travel and paying for all those artists ain't cheap. According to the AMA, which I'm putting a lot of faith in, Terry was a business owner and landlord and was able to finance everything for himself. People speculate that Banksy and Shepard funded this persona, but I don't know. It sounds like Terry wasn't the bestest of friends with anyone. The ending with the art show came out of nowhere and it seemed too artificially convenient. According to Jeff, there was a huge build-up leading up to the show that was omitted from the doc. Chris King and Jimmy both state that Banksy did send off Terry and they heard that he was putting a show together, but they didn't know the magnitude of it. The development of Mr. Brainwash was a shock to them as well, or so they say. If Terry was this bumbling idiot, why did Fairey and Banksy work with him and for so long? And why would Banksy let this rando film him anyways?
And this kind of gets back to the question of why did Banksy send in those helpers to help Terry get his gallery up and running?
Why did he care so much if it was Terry's project?
So we established that Terry had promised the documentary, and the AMA elaborates on it a bit further. According to Jeff, Terry had a grip on the tapes that since he paid for them and he shot them, then he outright owned them.
Terry has a deeply, very complicated emotional attachment. You know, any person who had spent that long making that many hours of film would not give them up easily.
Fair enough. Fairey was also aware of the value the footage held and wanted to take over the project, but Terry kept promising the final product, pushing the delivery date further and further, holding the tapes hostage. Once Banksy came along, Banksy made it clear that if Terry was to film him, then Banksy would own the tapes. When you add Terry's street credibility and the fact that he protected Banksy during the Disney controversy, then the longevity of this unconventional partnership starts to make sense.
So why do you guys think they indulged him? Was he a pet? Was he a sidekick? Was he...
Enthusiasm. I mean, first and foremost. He also, you know, he had impeccable credentials in that he was related to somebody who'd been at the very beginning of the movement. I mean, and had filmed with, you know, 2 or 3 of the French guys. There was no reason to question his, you know, motivation for doing this whatsoever.
Or his trustworthiness.
Or his trustworthiness, no. He was always going to keep the secret, and he was always going to be mad and go up higher and film things in crazy ways and carry the bucket of paint for them or help them put things up. You know, he made himself indispensable for a lot of people. You know, he was just a great person to have.
He's just very genuine and honest. I mean, he's really unusual in that sense. He's not trying to get anything from them. He's not, you know, he's not trying to get them to you know, pay him money or do anything other than just let him tag along.
Shepard Fairey, Jeff Alulis, Chris King, and Jimmy DeCruz swear that it's all too real. And I'm kind of inclined to believe them. Why would they lie to me?
A lot of people think it's some sort of art prank, and really, it isn't.
Try again. Is it real?
Yes, it's real.
I mean, what do you think when people do say this whole thing is a kind of joke?
Well, it completely baffles me because it isn't. It's a very conventionally told true story of something that happened between 2 people.
No, I mean, we were aware that it is literally an incredible story, one that sometimes stretches your credulity. You know, we didn't think that it was ever going to provoke people to believe that the whole thing had been made up and, you know, it was a hoax.
But I mean,
I just wanted to ask, from the point where Banksy brought you in, did you ever feel at any point like maybe he was subtly pulling strings? Did you ever feel that maybe that you were kind of being hoaxed
Puppets.
as well?
We were, yes.
Like
He
pawns.
Pulling the strings. Nah. It was actually a very honest film. It's one of the most honest films we've ever made. Because we were literally cutting it as the events were happening. For people to dismiss it as just a bit of silly fun pranking, trying to pull the wool over your eyes, felt like it was reducing it somewhat. I think Banksy felt the same as well.
Exit Through the Gift Shop was released on April 16, 2010, runs for 87 minutes, and is rated R for some language.
The first thing Chris said on day 1 was that it couldn't be longer than, was it 90 minutes?
Yeah.
And I said, well, why? And he's like, because no one's going to care.
Critically speaking, it did very well. IMDb's the lowest with a 7.9 out of 10, followed by Letterboxd with a solid 4 out of 5. Metacritic has a critics score at 85, while the users rated it at 8.1 out of 10. The highest metric is definitely Rotten Tomatoes. The critic score is at an impressive 96%, while the audience score has it at a 91%. Very cool. Roger Ebert did review this documentary, stating that he was spellbound while watching it and found it entertaining. He too believes that it's not a hoax.
We showed it as you do to most of your contributors. You give them a chance to watch it and give their notes and come back. And, and as Jamie said, there was some concern about how he was going to react. And what did he say?
He said, it is the best film I have ever seen in my whole life.
So there
and I think from that point we were, okay, Terry's on board.
In the end, the movie about street art was buried deep in this documentary of a man who stumbles upon this underground world and exploited it commercially. Exit to the Gift Shop was nominated for an Oscar at the 83rd Academy Awards in 2011 for the Best Documentary and unfortunately lost. I think the prestige of earning this reward would have been the cherry on top. In the various interviews I went through, it sounds like a sequel is currently under production. What do you think? Is Mr. Brainwash a walk-in exhibit created by Banksy? Comment below and let's continue theorizing together.
There's not a sequel.
And you know what's not enough? The exit through the gift shop is not enough. We need a part 2. So
Exactly.
you told me
We're
there's a part 2?
Yeah, we're working on it right now, and pretty soon we'll be there.
Okay.
We're working on it right now.
There's not a sequel.